Welcome to the Executive Insights podcast, brought to you by AWS, where we address vital questions and share unique perspectives from leaders at the intersection of business and technology.
Hello, this is Tanuja Randari, Managing Director of Europe, Middle East and Africa for Amazon Web Services. Welcome to another episode of Executive Insights, our CEO series. In this series, I will be speaking with CEOs from across the Europe, Middle East and Africa region about what it takes to transform business and society, how they are leveraging data and technology to accelerate growth and innovate, and their insights on topics such as sustainability and addressing the digital skills gap. We will also be providing a glimpse into the personalities behind some of our great leaders of industry. Today's guest has dedicated almost 25 years to the telecom and technology industry, where his leadership has been transformative across multiple continents. Known for his strategic acumen and passion for sustainable development, he has guided the company he leads to become the fastest growing brand in the world with a footprint spanning 38 markets. Recognized as one of the region's most impactful CEOs by Forbes Middle East, he was also named among the 30 tech leaders driving digital transformation in the Middle East by Economy Middle East, and as a top telecom leader on the Brand Guardianship Index in 2024. He has championed pivotal public and private sector partnerships, and during the pandemic seized the opportunity to reposition the company he leads from a telecom provider to a technology leader with a bold new strategy. Previously, he's also held key positions at Vodafone, including as CEO of Vodafone Egypt and Group Chief of Staff in London. An accomplished engineer with an MBA, he currently serves on several international boards, including Vodafone Group. Hatem Dowidar, Group CEO of EAND, welcome to Executive Insights.
Thank you very much, Tanuja, for the invitation and for that very heartfelt welcome.
It's wonderful to have you, and it's really great. I know we've been planning to do this for some time, so I'm super excited. Certainly, there's no one better I know that has navigated actually quite a lot of twists and turns. I know it's just a passion of yours, having known you, around innovation, but I think also the resilience you bring as a leader during transformation journeys through COVID, the pandemic, moving from being a telco provider to an international, global technology leader. I'd love to talk a bit about that. What advice, maybe to start with, would you give future leaders who are aiming to drive that type of transformation?
I think that, being bold is very, very important in business, because if we don't challenge the status quo, we end up with very small incremental growth. If you want really growth, we have to do things differently. And while I had, I was not an entrepreneur, I always worked in a corporate career. I was always, challenging the status quo in the way we do business. Maybe even before my, let's say, telecom days, I worked also for a few years in marketing in Procter & Gamble. And at that time, there was global formats for everything. And we were not getting the growth that we needed. And I actually recommended at the time that we bring a different format for marketing and advertising for detergents that at that time was very unusual in the P&G world, but was very, very successful, ended up with great results, and was actually recognized to be repeated afterwards in other emerging markets as well. And when I was offered to take this role in EAND, I talked to the chairman at that time, and I told him, look, I think this company has so much potential, but if I want to take the role, I want to do something different with it, which he agreed at the time. Also then working with the current chairman, who's also a very dear friend, who's, I think, even more daring than I am, we managed to really do a lot of change in the company, in the operating model, and create this evolution from a telecom to a tech company. And I think a lot of people have been talking about this for years, but I think that we were probably, if not the first, amongst the first in the telcos to actually start that transition, change the structure, change the business model, change the accountability. And so far, it looks like it's working. We have been investing in new businesses and adjacencies, and we've done that while at the same time managing to grow the business and grow our profits. So I think we're just now starting to see the beginning of some of these investments paying off and accelerating the growth even further.
I think there are three or four things I'd love to pull out from what you just said, by the way. First is starting, as you say, with, thinking bold and having a bold vision. I think, this idea of, leaders really at the very top being super committed, because you could have a vision and then get zero execution or, lots of execution and you're not really sure where the forest from the trees. So I think that's a huge theme that's coming through, I think. And then I think the second one I'd love to just lean in a little bit more with you is you're also encouraging your teams and empowering them to come with those ideas and bold visions and actually bring that sort of growth mindset where every challenge is an opportunity. How do you create within EAND this culture of innovation mindset and, not concern of failure? Because if you haven't failed, we all know this, right? But how do you create that environment?
I think being very clear with people that we reward innovation very well, and we do not punish people for innovating and failing. We try to get the lessons out of it, and we move forward. And I think this is very important for setting an innovation culture, because if people realize if they try something new and it fails and they get punished for it, they will never try something new again. That's it. So it has to be very clear that new ideas, as long as they're well thought through, that the homework has been done before, will not be punished if it doesn't work. And then we have a number of forums where we bring innovation to it, where we discuss this in a group of people. And normally in some of these groups, we have people even from other verticals, because, as part of this transformation, what we do is cross-pollination of ideas by having people from the different verticals attend sometimes ideas from something that is completely different than what they do, but they bring a different perspective on the market. They bring a different perspective on how it's done, on the technology. And this really works very well in terms of coming up with new products and new propositions we bring to the market.
Again, the very important point that I'd love to talk a bit more about with you is this idea of how do you, create the right inclusive environment with the psychological safety, but also the accountability and drive to deliver results. And I know you are a huge proponent, actually, of ensuring that the company is a great place to work. I think you've won many awards, actually, whether it's innovative companies in the workplace or great place to work, best employer brand in MENA. Help me understand a bit, maybe some of the things you're doing around talent and diversity to create that diversity of thought that you've just mentioned.
In the head office, I think we have about 70 different nationalities of people working, and that brings a lot of ideas. We also have been intentionally hiring people from different industries. So we're not just relying on the talent we had in telecom. We have people from the ICT industry. We have people from banking and private equity. We have people that are coming from retail, from FMCG, from all over, really. And having all these people together creates a great environment for innovation.
So as you've been transforming the company, you've been acquiring new businesses. And, obviously with that comes a lot of thought around integration of cultures, particularly as you now go into Europe and other places. What's the, mechanism or, how you think about it, or the mental models around how do you think about integration of cultures?
So I think what we try to do is, imagine a big puzzle that's there on the table, a huge one. And what we're trying to do is fill the pieces with the relevant parts of the business. So, for example, on the consumer platform, EAND Life, we have all the things that are on the adjacencies for consumers. So we have fintech applications, We have a TV streaming platform that competes with some of the bigger ones. You can get most of what you need in life on that app. And while we acquire these things and put the puzzle together, sometimes you find overlaps. And that's where you need to do a bit of trimming. And rather than integration, we call it simplification, because we also want a lot of these new businesses to run independently to keep the entrepreneurial spirit within these businesses. So what we do is we try to avoid expensive duplication of things. For example, we have food delivery in Careem, which is our everything app. And we had food delivery in Smiles, which is our loyalty app, where you can also exchange the loyalty points for different things, including food delivery. So now what we do is we have one engine, or we're moving towards one engine that delivers and operates in the back, but you have two storefronts. But at the back end, it's one operation. And by simplifying this, you still get the right share of the market, but at the same time, you don't spend costs that you don't need to spend. And we keep doing this. So, for example, we acquired in the cloud space a company in Turkey called Glasshouse, which is a leading company there in business continuity and backup in the cloud.
Yes.
And of course, they operate in Turkey, but they also have a couple of other operations. But they don't have operations here. They don't have operations in Saudi, in Egypt, and so on. And then we use our machine in these other markets to then push the proposition in these other markets as well. So it's really very complementary. There will be periods when we have overlaps, but what we do then is have a plan on how we reduce that overlap so all the pieces of the puzzle fit together and grow the illustration or the drawing we have on the puzzle bigger and bigger.
I love the way you think about it in terms of integration that preserves culture, entrepreneurship, innovation, but at the same time drives scale and simplification. A lot of times people think actually if you do one, you can get the other. You can absolutely get both.
And I always tell when people try to give me hard choices, I tell them we're and not or. So, I want both options. I don't want to make a choice. And I think this is very important in businesses that people understand that sometimes you can have it all. You don't need to choose one or the other. Of course, not 100% of the times, but in many, many instances, you'll find that you can actually push to get everything rather than just part of the outcome.
I couldn't agree more. We, as you know, we run the business, on our LPs, our leadership principles. You and I have talked about this a few times, and there are many of those LPs are actually, you think, in conflict with each other, but actually they work together. So you can think big and be dive deep. You don't have to only be focused on thinking. You are delivering results as well.
We hope you're enjoying this discussion. To join the conversation and engage with other business leaders on these topics, follow AWS Executive Insights on LinkedIn.
I'd love to just talk a bit about the UAE more broadly, if I may, Hatem. Super impressive to see the incredible ambition to become one of the world's most digitally advanced nations, with AI as a national priority. How does EAND and your role and EAND's role align with this national vision? And how do you see AI shaping UAE's future?
I think, again, as a smallish country in the big scheme of the world, there has to be a competitive edge. And I think the UAE strategically has chosen that it will be a safe, efficient, business-friendly place for the whole world. And we have been applying AI in lots of things in the company, but in the UAE overall. So actually, the UAE have appointed a minister of AI in 2017. I mean, at that time, AI was not higher up on anybody's agenda. But in the UAE, already there is a minister. Then we already have appointed the chief AI and data officer reporting directly to me a couple of years ago. that's focusing on coordinating all the AI work streams across the company. And just in the UE operation, we have over 900 work streams at the moment active on AI. So I think AI is one of the industrial revolutions we've seen in the past. So the same
Yes.
way, like, steam power, electricity, computing, and now AI is really changing the way the world will be in terms of doing business and all that has to do with that. And I think the decision has been overall in the UE, the leadership had the vision that the UE will be leader in this. And of course, many of the entities, including ourselves, there's a dozen other entities in the UE that have great also work being done in the AI space, from developing large language models to developing applications that integrate different industries using AI. And the work continues. And of course, building giga data centers here in the UE that are not only essential for teaching these large language models, but also for running them in the future and generating, all the amount of information needed to have a fully functional AI, not only for the UE, but being a center that can empower also lots of the adjacent countries.
I couldn't agree with you more. AI has been here for a very long time. We've been using it from the very early days of Amazon.com, and of course, with generative AI, just provides further transformative potential across every industry, I think, every vertical, to your point, actually, whether it's consumer facing or business to business or back office processing and all of the above. And I do think, one of the things with the UAE that's been incredibly impressive is the pace at which you're implementing change there, adopting new technologies, as you said, learning while you're adopting new technologies as well. And to see the e-government initiative has been incredible.
It's very important that AI doesn't remain as an elusive concept where we talk about the technology. I think people expect to see how AI makes their life different. And I think this is what we're trying to do, is work on these applications that actually help people and that people can feel. I mean, there has been a number of applications before that are, I would call them more industrial applications. For example, security cameras that are using AI to analyze situations, especially, for example, with what we're doing in the petrochemical industry, making sure that the automation there, that everybody is wearing the health and safety equipment, that, if somebody has an accident, you don't need even another human to notice, because the AI through the camera system will identify that and create an immediate alert. So many uses that AI, as it advances, is able to offer us beyond just the corporate world into the everyday life.
And I think this is where, I do think one of the key parts of your digital transformation vision, you deeply talk about creating social impact, actually, for underserved communities, deeply talk about societal equity, the digital divide. I mean, I really, it does keep me up, because I think the biggest concern we have is not the technology. There's so much of that available and we're all innovating, all of us together, but the skills aspect, the democratization of and availability of this technology to people is so important.
I think it's very important to understand that to utilize tech, you need a number of things. You need devices, you need energy, and you need connectivity. If any of them are missing, you cannot have people join the digital world. And of course, given that we work in places like Africa, we work also in some places in Asia where a lot of people remain unconnected. We have been working with the World Economic Forum, with the ITU, with the GSMA on connecting the unconnected. And over the past years, and I think this is a great thing that the telecom industry has done, is the ability to connect people in a much more efficient and also in a very affordable way in many of these countries. So in some of these countries, we can provide people with connectivity for a couple of dollars a month, not just voice and data. And this really brings these people into today's world, because they can then engage into communication. They can use emails. Farmers can get, updates on the weather. People can get alerted. And this is one of the things we've been working on, for example, natural disaster alerts, which is, again, not only saves resources, but saves lives. And these are all things that are enabled by connectivity. But I think that the main issue that we have today is that the digital divide might grow beyond connectivity, because today there are many countries where there aren't any data center capacity. And then some of these countries even then have data sovereignty laws that prevent the data from being computed elsewhere. There needs to be the flexibility of creating safe environments where countries that doesn't have the capability to crunch their data in the country, that they have to do that elsewhere. So I think there has to be that kind of cooperation between countries on creating these hubs where multiple countries cooperate together. I'm talking now about the emerging markets, the frontier markets that cannot afford to have the capacity that we see in the US, in Germany, in the UK, in France, and Japan, China, and so on. And this is part of what we're doing here in the UAE. We're trying to create a computing capacity, a cloud hub here that can help also friend countries where they can safely bring their data that we can work with.
I think you're so spot on. I think the UAE, with its data embassy law, focus as well, which means that even if you're, it's African companies, you can be in the UAE and be completely like you're back in your own country when it comes to the data laws, right? So you are doing so much around this. And I think the idea of the UAE promoting this technology for the betterment of not only society, underserved communities, growth, innovation in the broader GCC. I think it's a phenomenal vision, by the way. And, we're certainly super excited, I know, working together with you on this. But I actually did want to also touch on that in a way, because, we do see almost 70% or more, maybe even, of the Middle East companies, starting to move to cloud and planning to move to cloud and embrace AI in the next 2 years. And we all know that it's a disruptive force for good, or it could be a disruptive force if you don't really embrace this. Enormous potential. I'd love your sense of kind of what role you think, the AWS partnership plays in driving this transformation that you're talking about, not only for EAN, but for the broader UAE and GCC.
I think that, we have to also be very frank. Similar to computing today, for the cloud, there are only 2 or 3 names today that are becoming the basis for how the cloud operates. And of course, AWS is a leader in this. And to be able to get people to move in the cloud, you need to get the knowledge, the capacity, the know-how, and so on to people. And of course, connecting it together. And this is where I think working together, we're able to do that, because we have, of course, the connectivity, the access to the physical data centers, but more importantly, we have a lot of experts in the market that can go, because global companies like AWS, you cannot have thousands of salespeople that go to small companies in every market and explain to them how cloud is good for them. But we can, because we have those people. We're selling to people the connectivity. We've been selling them security as well. So as we sell them connectivity, things like websites and so on, we've been doing for some time. Now we can expand this by joining forces together, where we can sell to them the end-to-end technology, because we tell them, look, we connect you, we secure your connection, and then you have website, and then your information, you don't need to run the website on your own server. Everything now will run on the cloud, and we can provide you that capability as well. And then, of course, as AI gets more developed, also the CRM and all the things that needs to happen to help their business will also happen in the cloud as well. So it becomes a great proposition, because it's also very efficient for companies, because instead of having, a very small company that has 2 or 3 IT people, they don't need them anymore, because they can have a more robust infrastructure that is based on the cloud, that is updated automatically, that's a lot more secure. and these people can be deployed to do other things in the company. And this is, I think, the future that already we have seen some countries that are gradually moving there, and we are trying to move the entire region, the entire footprint where we work towards that vision as well. And that's where our cooperation will help accelerate this.
I think your commitment to small, medium businesses is really important because they are the bedrock of almost every economy. And I see that, by the way, across Europe as well. Providing access to infra solutions, connectivity, as you say, energy. And by the way, let me add training, because you and I have been super committed on this idea of, certifying, I think, we said 60,000 individuals. I think if you leave the training behind, it doesn't work, right? Because people don't have the capability to make it happen. I think it's exciting what you're doing, actually, and we're very excited to be working with you. I think your knowledge, talent, and capability is super complementary. And the verticals you talked about earlier, be it EN Life or EN Enterprise or EN Money. There's just so many different places actually for us to leverage your knowledge in local knowledge, but also increasingly European knowledge. And who knows where else, Hatem, you will go for sure. I love that. Thank you for being so open and sharing your experiences, the goods, the difficult moments. I think that's what our listeners love to hear. It's been wonderful speaking to you. And I know everyone is going to be listening and is going to take away lots of fantastic, pragmatic tips and tricks on how to be an amazing leader, driving incredible change in a country, in a region that is just moving at the speed of light. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Thank you, Tanuja. I did have a lot of fun. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Executive Insights, brought to you by AWS. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by rating and reviewing. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.